Hope everyone's doing well. Welcome to MAGIA Mindset. Today's guest, we got Dr. David Carr. He's been a United Soccer Coaches member since 1974, has spearheaded one of the best master's program in coaching in soccer around at Ohio University. Let's roll the intro. Dr. Carr, how you doing?
Good. How are you, sir?
Good. I'm doing good. How's everything with the family out in Ohio?
I'm not in Ohio.
You're not.
No,
Where are you at?
I live in South Carolina.
Oh wow. Okay. How's the family in South Carolina?
He's good.
Yeah, is everything okay? How is the city over there right now?
Well, I don't know. We haven't been out.
So you guys are on extreme lockdown over there too.
Well, it's more or less we've chosen. We can get groceries delivered. We have a self-contained environment, so we get out. We get a workout in early in the morning,
Yeah.
and basically we just stay home.
Oh, great.
Yeah, I mean it's things are better than they were.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see. They've decided to open up the state, so more people are out and about, and we'll see if that leads to a spike in infection and see if things change. But things are better than they've been. But we're still there's still quite a bit of infection. It's not so much near us now. It's bad up in the center part of the state towards Charlotte, Columbia, north of us. Georgia's bad, except for Savannah, which is near us. Savannah's not too bad at all, but the mayor has a lot to do with that. He kind of shut things down, and it's worked in Savannah, but the governor in Georgia is an idiot, so he didn't do much of anything to help protect people. So
yeah, we got extended till August as well. We're going till August.
Okay.
So it should be interesting to see how things go day to day. Obviously, the lockdown doesn't really portray the sports world. I think the sports world is always going to be the later one because just the way we're built with the sport. Obviously, the professionals will go first, and then the next will be kind of a domino effect. But I know that
we're starting to see some of the residual effects of the impact. They're not sure if they're going to open stadiums.
Yeah.
And if they do, it's going to be on a far more limited basis, which is going to have an even more substantial impact on budgets. We're starting to see colleges and universities eliminate sports and downsize and restrict all kinds of factors relative to how sport has traditionally been done. It's probably not necessarily a bad thing that they're taking a critical look at how sport will function in the future.
Yeah.
But it's, Furman University, which is in South Carolina, dropped baseball and lacrosse today.
Wow.
Bowling Green in Ohio dropped baseball yesterday.
Wow.
University of Cincinnati dropped men's soccer.
I heard about that one.
So you're going to see, we at Ohio, they've basically terminated 53 faculty members, 140 administrators, and 190 hourly employees. The faculty will have another year on their contract, but then they're done. everybody else is done like immediately. So we had a $60 million hole to fill.
Wow. Wow.
And until they get people back on campus and, paying tuition and paying room and board and get other functions going on the university campus that generate revenue, it's a problem. It's not just Ohio; it's everywhere.
Yeah.
So we'll see how things evolve.
No, perfect. We'll dissect into that too. I want to get more of that perspective. But before we get going, again, Dr. Carr, I know you have a busy schedule. I truly appreciate you making the time.
No problem.
You have truly been a very strong mentor in my coaching journey as well, especially in the master's program. So truly appreciate that and putting in the time for this. So right off the bat, Dr. Carr, we want to know kind of your journey as a player and a coach and how you became this whole path to where you are right now.
Okay. It's I got to go back a long way. I was fortunate. I grew up in New Jersey, and I went to a small K through 8 elementary school. And we had a physical education teacher who was a professional soccer player from Europe. And he had come over, been in the States for a long time. And so we got exposed to soccer, pretty much everybody in the school, from a very early age. I was exposed to when I was in first, second grade. And we played it in PE. It was one of the major sports that we were engaged in early on. So I loved sport. I loved athletics. He was sort of my mentor when I got started because I had him as a soccer coach, a basketball coach, and a baseball coach. I got decent at all three. So played a little bit of everything. Wasn't put in a particular position. I think kids early on think they're going to be forwards and goal scorers. But it's you want to be on the field and you want to play. So where's my opportunity? So when I went on, I moved to Vermont for high school, and made my high school team as a freshman or as a sophomore actually, and became a center back. I was physically bigger than most. I was athletic. I was okay. I could read the game well. I saw the game in front of me. I liked the role of keeping the ball out of our penalty area. So basically, played through high school, played summer club ball, went off to college, played Division I as a center back. Now, as my career in college developed, we had an Olympic level guy. We played a 3-back system. That was the order of the day. Basically a 3-3-4. And we played with 4 up front with a striker and a withdrawn striker. So we had a limitation of players my senior year. We didn't have anybody with a left foot. So I ended up moving from center back to left wing. And I wasn't the fastest left wing in the world, but I had a left foot. So I adapted. Went on to play after that. Got into coaching very early after I graduated from college. So I was a head high school coach when I was 23.
Wow.
So, and then, kind of coaching, I still played mostly in summer leagues. I used to put my high school players in an adult summer league, so that, they saw the game at a little faster, stronger, more physical, really helped them develop, because they kind of saw where it was. Got a chance to play with them, which was kind of cool. Rules were a little different back then. Basically, once I finished my degree, I transitioned into coaching and was still coaching soccer in the fall, basketball in the winter, baseball in the spring. So I kind of stayed with that until I transitioned to be a full-time soccer coach in the early 80s. Sort of made that leap from high school to college and became a full-time college coach.
Nice, nice. And then how did from being a college coach, you kind of stumble upon taking over as the master's program in Ohio?
Well, I didn't stumble on it.
Oh,
Basically, I coached for 14, almost 15 years before I made a decision to go back to get my doctorate. But to do it in a way that allowed me to teach coaching. Now, there wasn't a doctorate in coaching education in existence, so I had to create one. So when I went to Virginia Tech, I worked with two really high-level physical education pedagogy people that really understood the teaching process inside and out, and they sort of work with me to create my own doctorate in sport pedagogy and built the bridge from teaching to coaching. Coaching is teaching, but it's kind of a different way of teaching a bit. So I did my doctorate at Virginia Tech in sport pedagogy with the idea that I was going to actually go start a master's program in coaching.
wow. So you had this vision in advance.
Long time ago. Yeah, long time ago. So the reality was Ohio became that place. They didn't hire me specifically to start a coaching education program, but once I was there and we looked at the landscape of the programs that we had and what we were doing, there was clearly a need to develop more of a coaching education involvement for our master's students. So we basically took an athletic administration master's degree, put it on the shelf, and I created the master's in coaching education that we do on campus. That was 20 years ago. So we were able to get coaching education as a foundation major at the graduate level. And then over time, we built an online version of the campus program. And then I was able to build a soccer-specific online program following a model of the original athletic admin program that we had put online. So we created sort of like sister programs. One in athletic admin for high school athletic directors, the other one in in coaching ed, followed by soccer coaching. And this summer, we're going to start professional tennis management.
Nice, fantastic.
So we have 4 different programs now.
No, fantastic. I think one of the greatest things in this is I kind of figured you stumbled upon it, but you kind of spearheaded it. You had a vision set and you went after it. And I think it transitions into our next question,
okay,
where I want you to kind of tie both, since you have the education on behind it, your coaching style and the way you view the game. And also if you can tie into the coaching going on within our country. And is it going in that right direction? Are they well educated? Are they really dissecting it? Or is it more of professional players or something thinking like, this is how we play it, this is how we do it, instead of educators teaching them the paths to go?
Well, I think there's been some changes. There was a period that if you played, you had a knowledge of the game and you had played it, so therefore it was more or less understood that you could probably coach it. We've sort of proven that that's not necessarily the case. There are some very good players that are very good coaches, but there are a lot of players who really aren't particularly good at all of the things that go into being an effective coach. So we recognize that the education component, actually take somebody who has a background in the game or knows the game in some way, but then actually teach them how to coach. What we generally see is a lot of people who don't have a teaching background or a pedagogy background miss a lot of the communication, the organization and planning of an effective session, organizing instruction, providing appropriate feedback, creating an environment in which players want to grow and learn. Some of those pieces are missing. So those are things that in the coaching education scheme need to be addressed. What we've seen for actually the better part of 50 years almost, it was the early 70s when U.S. Soccer started the coaching schools back in 72, 73. So it's been around for a while. Now it's taken different shapes. It's taken maybe a little different philosophy in terms of what they teach, how they teach it, what they emphasize, what the D course is, what the C course is, what the B course is, what the A course is. How does that progression work? United Soccer coaches sort of got into the same way of presenting week-long coaching education courses with probably a little bit more coach-centered. It's an athlete-centered philosophy, but it's a coach-centered approach focused on developing the coach. There's some nuances and differences between U.S. Soccer, what U.S. Soccer typically does and what United Soccer coaches typically does. So to kind of get back to your question, my background is I was an athlete-centered coach long before the concept was really developed in terms of comparison. I was an athlete-centered coach in a coach-centered world. Most of my coaches were actually pretty good with me from being, not that it was an athlete-centered philosophy, but the coaches were not yellers and screamers and demanders and autocratic in every way. They worked with players. They encouraged players. They knew how to motivate. They knew how to communicate pretty well. So I had a pretty good development as a player. Typically, most coaches take a lot of what they did as a player and put it into their coaching. They coach the way they were coached and don't necessarily question whether or not it's good or bad. It's, well, this is what happened with me. This is, I guess, what happens when I coach. So we started to take a look at practices that we sort of were able to demonstrate that weren't particularly effective. Strategies that didn't work with players. A demeanor from the coach that didn't work with players. It may have worked with a few, but it didn't work for the masses. And so then you start asking the questions, why? Why do we do things certain ways? Why is it done this way? Why is it not done some other way? Why do we warm up the way we do? Why do we practice technique the way we do? Why do we wait to the end of practice to scrimmage? So the questions that I started to ask very early on in my development as a coaching educator all centered around the why, and then let's find out why. Let's find a response. And a lot of the questions were, it turned, we do certain things, like, for example, most coaches in most sports will start practice by doing some sort of running. Go take a lap around the field, run around the gym, run some over here, run up a hill. Well, let's do some running. And it's typically done early on, and it can be demanding. It can be physically difficult, maybe. And so what we end up doing is right at the beginning of practice, we turn players off. They don't want to run just to run. They'll be fine if you let them play, in which running is involved. So why do we run laps? Well, reality, it doesn't do what we think it does. So why are we doing that? So let's find other ways to do it. So I was engaged as an athlete-centered coach with a small-sided games mentality before small-sided games had really been talked about. So I was doing a lot of one-on-ones and two-on-twos and 2v1s and 3v2s and 5v5s and changing the space, changing the dynamics of the game, changing the emphasis of what we were doing and why we were doing it. I did that. I was doing that back 30, 40 years ago. And it made sense. And my players played well. And they liked coming to practice. And they weren't late. And they played hard. And we played a lot. And we went home. And then we're all ready to go the next day. So there were a lot of things that I started to go through the process of questioning. So that's a foundation of the program that you went through, is in every class, why do we do the things that we do? And is this the best way, or are there multiple best ways? Or are there things that we should avoid doing because of the things we've learned about why certain things don't work very well?
No, that's great.
That was a long time.
No. Honestly, Dr. Carr, when you get into the stories and different perspectives, it's even better because you have so much knowledge that you're actually sharing with us that the more it comes from you, the better it is. So truly appreciate that. Two things that I grasped from the master's program and I've held to this day, and I'm still continuing to elaborate in my life as well as in my development, coaching, and every aspect. One was the first day. You said your opinions don't matter.
Okay.
And to me, that sat with me as I'm going to constantly be a student. I am never going to be satisfied that I know it all and I'm the preacher and I got to sit there. So I got to sit back, continue to learn from everyone. So that was one that sat with me. The other one was there was a live session we ran in Ohio. I believe one of the coaches jumped in as a goalkeeper because the numbers weren't even.
Right.
And you pulled him out and you were like, no, don't ever jump in, manipulate the environment. And I really love that because I'm like, you know what? Because when you jump in, it has one perspective of the camera, but you're not seeing the whole canvas as well. But based in club trainings, if you have 10, 11, 13, maybe it's odd numbers or something. And
well, it's dealing in that particular case, and it comes up all the time, is you've got an odd number. Deal with the odd number. A lot of coaches would create an even numbered game and do something different with the odd kid.
Yes.
Or the coach would jump in to make the numbers even. And what we want to try to get across to players is that you're going to be in numbers up and numbers down circumstances for the entirety of the time that you play. We might put 22 players on the field, but in any point in the game, there's going to be a numerical advantage or a numerical disadvantage. Deal with it. Players solve the problem. Coaches don't jump into the game to solve the problem. So, I kind of learned that one early on that, if you want to have a small-sided game and you have 9 players, okay, what do? Well, I could make a really small game in 3v3 and have a third team, and they rotate in and out, so everybody gets a little bit of a breather. Okay. Or we play 5v4. Somebody's got 5, somebody's got 4, figure it out. The opinion piece is I kind of say it the way I say it, and you repeated it, is to sort of make a point that actually, yes, your opinion does matter, and we will ask for your opinion because we want to know what you think. But when we ask you a why question, is you may have a perspective, but who agrees with you? So it's just not, well, I think we ought to do X, Y, and Z. Well, who else would do X, Y, and Z? So it's to get you into the mindset of what's the research telling us? You know, what's 100 years of playing the game in this country? What have we learned from it? You know, what do we know about training? What do we know about practice? What do we know about learning skills? What do we know about teaching tactics? What do we know about utilization of space? Pick any question. We want you to get into the literature, get into the stuff that's been sort of researched, looked at, critically analyzed. And these are the things that we know. It's what's an interesting aspect of that is I was involved in writing the original national youth license for U.S. soccer. And we used the research and the literature heavily as a foundation for the things that we put into that course. Now, 25 years later, we've rewritten it. It's now the National Youth Diploma. We kept a lot of the basic foundation stuff, but we've got 25 years of research that either confirms or has caused us to rethink, you know, doing things slightly differently or in a different way, or, you know, maybe that's not as effective as we thought it was 25 years ago because the research has changed.
No, true.
Yeah.
So now going into our next one, before kind of like the message during this time for our coaches, players, I wanted you to kind of, since you're seeing it from an educator, from a coach in the departments, how is our landscape in NCAA, college, we can even dissect professional and youth, in your opinion, transforming during this time that we're in timeout, basically?
Well, yeah, we are in timeout, and we're starting to see some sports are starting to re-engage. Individual sports, you know, tennis has found a way to play for two people to play tennis without really being in each other's space. Okay. Doubles is a little trickier, but certainly singles. Golf, instead of guys just showing up and getting in a foursome to play a round of golf, we're now seeing 4 players, each in their own individual cart, playing an individual game of golf around for 3 other people. And to watch the dynamics of how that works is really kind of interesting. The difficulties with team sports, with the physical presence of 1, 2, 3, 5 people based on the way the game is played is going to present very different challenges. First of all, when or how will we know that if we bring 15, 16 people together to train, that everybody's okay? How do we know if the kids are okay, the players are okay, regardless of age, the coach, the assistant coach, other people that might be in that environment? the parents that bring the kids to practice and hang around, or if we have a game and the parents come to watch the game. Are we asking the parents still to social distance on the sideline? How do we engage the kids safely? What are safeguards that we need to seriously think about? I raised some questions the other day. Almost every coach that I know of uses those little small disc cones, and they'll put them all over the space, and they'll use them in different ways to mark barriers, to set up goals, to create gates, to create channels, to create whatever. In 35 years of coaching, I probably picked up 5 cones because the kids pick them up. Are we having kids pick up cones? Do we disinfect? Do we wipe down the balls after? These are all questions that are now being asked as to what steps do coaches and others need to take to re-engage in the game safely. A question that came up about scrimmage vests. Usually, the coach will have a dozen scrimmage vests in a bag, and he'll throw them out, or the kids will get them and put them on, and then they'll throw them back in a pile. Well, are we comfortable with that now? Are we to the point where every kid, if you want to be a soccer player or you're playing a sport that requires you to designate what team you're on, are you going to have to get 3 or 4 different color vests and put them in your own bag, and you wear your own vest and take it home and wash it and put it back in your bag? Is this where we're going? I think the interactions, somebody came out the other day and said they're not going to be comfortable until there's a vaccine. And that may be true for a lot of people. So I think you're going to see, as we open the game up or open sport up, there will be some that will be ready to go and they are willing to take whatever risk presents itself. There will be others that they're not willing to take that risk. And it may take some time before they're comfortable. And, again, evidence. How big is the issue? Did we bring everybody back too soon and we've created the coronavirus all over again? We're going to find out. We're going to find out fairly soon. Pretty much everybody has indicated this, although I did see one change today. They've indicated that fall sports is going to go forward. So when we get to August,
NCAA,
high school, youth programs, obviously professional sport that typically starts in the fall, they're all sort of gearing up like, okay, we're gonna get back at it. I think I did see one school that announced that they were not going to bring students back to campus until October 5th.
Yeah.
So it's like we're going to go through August and September and kind of see, and then we'll have some sort of modified campus-based program. Ohio's planning, as of right now, to bring everybody back for fall semester. Now, what that will look like, we don't know yet.
Yeah. No, for sure. I think that's the true unknown, and it kind of segues to our next part where, from your end, what is your message for our young players, our professional players, our college players, our coaches at all levels, our parents and families from all levels during this COVID-19? What is, like, from you in your expertise on behind the scenes, what would you say during this time we should be doing as a community?
Well, I think we're doing a lot of we're coping. Everybody's coping in different ways. We've seen some very creative and imaginative individual sessions that the coach gets together with their kids on Zoom and gives them some ideas or suggestions of things that they can work on in the game. We can actually, if you put the camera in the right place, we can actually watch kids train or watch kids do stuff with the ball. So there can be some guided, but the problem is, unless you've got a couple of brothers or a couple of sisters or a sister and a brother who can sort of play against each other or play do some things as a pair, or maybe even a group of three. There aren't that many of those circumstances, but they have some different options. But if you're sort of in the house and you're by yourself, you're limited. As a soccer player, you get with the ball, you do as much movement, play with the ball, work with the ball, turn with the ball. They show a gazillion different ways to juggle it. But you need to run with it. You need to turn with it. You need to play with it. Play it off a board. Work on receiving it in as many different ways as you can. Basketball, you get out in your driveway and you can shoot baskets all day. You can work on ball handling. You can work on dribbling. You can work, but it's tough to do a whole lot of passing and receiving and some other things because if you're by yourself. So we've seen a lot of creativity there. But as we evolve, coaches are getting educated. They're taking advantage of, there are webinars every day, and there are a lot of good ones. There are lots of new things that are sort of being explored, new things to think about, new training methods, new ideas about assessing players, new concepts about teaching tactics. My friend Danny Gaspar has done a ton of stuff with just basic goalkeeping technique. And there are others that are doing the same kind of thing. So people in the coaching world have been either proactive in terms of putting information out there, but also getting information to broaden their perspective as a coach. And then throw in all kinds of other topics, motivation, all the psychology stuff, teaching, communicating. There's some really great stuff out there that coaches can benefit from. And because they tend to have a little bit of time now, they can become active learners. And hopefully that will transition into them being a little more knowledgeable, having some better ideas, thinking about the process more, that sort of thing.
What about if we transition on the emotional perspective, the light at the end of the tunnel? I know a lot of families, even on my end, when I communicated to some of my classes, the college students and even the younger players, you can see the emotional burnout. Sometimes they're even getting emotional in that perspective of just this whole time has been difficult for families.
Sure.
And, the light, how do you stay strong during this time and be motivated that light at the end of the tunnel is very bright?
Well, I think we would like to think that it's getting brighter. We are at some point going to come out of this. I think the emotional side and the concerns that people have, and everybody reacts a little bit differently, it's the unknown. And we know a lot, but there's so much we don't know that we can only speculate.
Yeah.
We get through this period. There's some evidence that it's likely to come back. Will it, when will it come back? How will it come back? Will it be worse than it was the first time? Will it be longer or shorter? Are we actually waiting to get a vaccine to make sure that everybody's protected? It might be that, but we don't really know right now.
Yeah. No.
That has everybody reacts differently, and it takes an emotional toll. There are some people that they're engaged in the information gathering about what's going on a regular basis. There are others that sort of, they don't want to deal with it. They just kind of put it over there, and they go on with their day, and they get into other things, or they find other things to engage in that takes their mind off of it. But then, people will circle back to it, or something happens and now it's front and center and I got to deal with it again. I don't think there's a magic formula for it. It's with what I do is I'm planning as best I can for what I'm involved in terms of going forward, that, we'll be back in front of our students, and we'll be back together on the field, and we'll be able to train, and we'll be able to play matches, and we'll do it in a safe environment. And chances are we'll probably do it more conscious of how to do it better.
No, for sure. For sure. So Dr. Carr, before we close it out, I have to bring this up. We got to end it with this. Your favorite team of all time.
Okay.
Your favorite player of all time.
Well, I'm not sure I have a favorite team.
Mm-hmm.
I'm probably partial to the run of Barcelona 2010, 2011, 2012, back in there, when they were phenomenal.
The tiki-taka era.
Yeah. I'm kind of partial to that. Now, there were some teams at Real Madrid that I very much enjoyed watching. There are a couple of teams in the Premier League that, from time to time, it all came together, and they were brilliant and a lot of fun to watch. I have the tendency to follow all sports. So, I grew up because I grew up in New Jersey. I was in the shadow of Yankee Stadium and used to watch the Yankees play. Mm-hmm. And the teams of the Yankees. And Mickey Mantle was my favorite player. Mm. I was fortunate that I got to see players like Wilt Chamberlain and Jerry West and some of the beginning the great Celtics players play live. So I tended to pay attention to that. Soccer on TV was not a huge thing growing up for me. Mm. I got exposed to the game and I loved to play it, but I wasn't really able to watch it. Now, that said, in 1968, I had an opportunity to go to Yankee Stadium. So this is 52 years ago. Mm. Okay. I had a chance to go to Yankee Stadium in New York and see Pelé play for Santos against Inter Milan in an international friendly with a stadium full of either fanatic Italians or fanatic Brazilians. It was phenomenal. Wow. So in terms of that, probably hooked me as much as anything to the game going forward, which became a career for me. So Pelé is my favorite player of all time. There's a lot of other players that I think are really, really good, but it's Pelé and everybody else.
And I love how you said you saw him in person, and it's crazy because if you saw him in person, live, you saw the evolution of soccer from then till now.
Yes.
How special was he now that you've seen all of that's beautiful. That is beautiful. That is beautiful.
So I've been fortunate enough to see him play 4 times, and I've met him, and he's signed a jersey for me. So,
how special is it that you've seen him live? You've spoken to him. You see the now that he was, and now you've been as a coach, as a player. You've seen the evolution of soccer. When you see the game today, you're like, man, Pele was ahead of his game. He was a genius.
Well, he was phenomenal. Now, he also, I think, set a standard in. There's a video that try to get a copy of if you can.
Okay.
It's called. There was a book, and then there was a video, and there was actually a video series, and it's called Pelé: The Master and His Method. Came out in the early 70s while he was still with Santos.
Wow.
Because he does all of it's broken up into skill, developing juggling, developing dribbling, developing passing and receiving, developing shooting. And he does all of the work on camera. It's brilliant, but he's still with Santos, and it's filmed in Brazil. That was a catalyst for, as a teacher and a coach, is how can I create an environment for kids to do that? Now, in his growing up, he developed those skills playing the game in some way, shape, or form. We don't practice skills in he didn't practice skills in isolation. He worked with the ball, but he was constantly playing and creating an environment where he could experiment and try stuff without the fear of being yelled at by a coach. Okay, so, the magical athlete, brilliant in terms of creative problem solving on the field, which he did. If you watch Cruyff play, Cruyff just solved every problem that the game ever threw and was brilliant. Cruyff's in my top 5. Messi is brilliant at being able to maneuver the ball in traffic and hit the perfect ball or hit the perfect pass or put himself in a position to get the ball. I mean, Ronaldo is fun to play. I've been fortunate enough to see Ronaldo play live. I go back to some of the
Portuguese or the Brazilian?
Both, actually. I saw the Portuguese player live. The other Ronaldo was before my time, or I just wasn't in the right place to see him play. Beckenbauer was brilliant.
Yeah.
And I was a center back. He was a center back, so you sort of pay attention. It was fascinating to watch him play, and he never got his uniform dirty. He never went to ground. Didn't have to.
No, that's brilliant.
So I tend to pay more attention to coaches now. So I love to see what Pep has got in mind. I love some of the other. Klopp has got a really good concept of what he wants.
Have you read Pep's Evolution book?
Mm-hmm.
Very intriguing.
I have it on my bookshelf.
Very intriguing. But Dr. Carr, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much. For me, for the audience, I think you have spearheaded one of the best master's program from Ohio University in soccer around the U.S. I don't think there is a soccer coaching program in a master's at all compared to the Ohio program. The connections, the teaching, the methodology behind it. So I want you also to close it out with anything you want to say going forward, because I think our viewers, for our nation to grow too, they need to understand that if Ohio has one of the top ones, but we have so much better, great coaching coming around here that this education should be taken advantage. And it's an online program too. I think this is.
Well, we knew that we had to create something for the working coach. The day of basically being able to pick up and go physically back to school, if you've got a job and a family and roots in a community, unless you can do it in that community, it's, and we've created now online learning, it gets better every day. I was involved early on in creating online programs. I learned from some very, very, very good people in terms of their concepts of what works online. So I was lucky to be in the right place at the right time at the right school. So we love what we do. If there's anybody that's thinking about doing a master's level graduate program and wants to specifically focus on soccer, we'd love to talk to you about it. Shawn's one of our grand alumni that can actually tell you all the things that he liked about it, and he can certainly tell you the things that you need to be prepared for, and how it works, and what we try to do. We are constantly revamping the things that we do. We revisit every course every time we teach it. We're constantly adding new things and new thoughts and new ideas. So we're very fortunate that Ohio's been a very good place for us to develop coaching education as a whole, but the soccer one has been a labor of love for me because it's my sport. And we're thankful that we can continue to do this and work with coaches like yourself.
Well, we're thankful to have you as a mentor, an instructor, and a teacher of this beautiful game. Thank you so much, Dr. Carr.
You're welcome, Shawn. Take care. We'll talk again.
For sure.